Welcome everybody to our Financial Aid Next Steps webinar here at Missouri State. My name is Matt and I'm with the Office of Admission and I'm going to be your moderator tonight. I know I can speak for my co-host and our presenter, Stephen, when I say that we're really excited that you've all joined us for this event. Before we begin the program, I do have a couple of housekeeping reminders for everyone. First and foremost, we want your questions. Obviously, Stephen has a lot of great content he's going to go through, but we also want to hear from you. We want to know what questions you have, what feedback you are concerned with. Stephen and I are going to answer some questions throughout the presentation, but we also have time at the end. It's important to us to answer as many of your questions as we possibly can. So please use the Q&A in your Zoom. You'll see down at the bottom of the Zoom webinar a Q&A tab, and you can use that tab to send us your questions. And like I said, it's important to us that we can answer as many of them as we possibly can. Do be aware that if it's a question that maybe is about something really specific to your situation, possibly even confidential, there are some questions that will be better for individual follow-up. So just be aware that some questions we may want to connect with you after our event to get that handled. The other thing we do want to make sure you're aware of is that this event is being recorded on YouTube. We early next week will send out to everyone who's registered tonight a link to the recording. So you can double check that. If you had to leave early, those type of things, you'll be able to have that recording for your reference. So again, we're glad that you're here. Should be a great event. And with those reminders taken care of, I'm going to hand it over to my co-host and our presenter this evening, Stephen Garman.
Thank you, Matt, for that introduction. And welcome, everyone. A huge shout out to Matt and his team in admissions for having us back. One of the best parts of what we do in financial aid is interacting with individuals, with the students, both current and prospective. So this is a really great opportunity for us to communicate with you all. I hope we learn a lot tonight. So here's what we're going to do. Tonight's about aid offers. First, we're going to look at the timeline of when to expect an aid offer, what to do with your aid offer, and when you should take action. We'll also explore what you will see on your aid offer at Missouri State. We'll talk about how to accept the financial aid that you're offered. And then at the end, we hope to have a little time for some FAFSA questions, because sometimes the aid offer may not be the best representation of what you could qualify for, believe it or not. And we'll go into that in a little bit more detail. Before we get started, though, I want to know who is joining us tonight. So Matt's going to launch a poll real quick. If you can let us know who you are. That just gives us an idea of what your familiarity is with the college process, whether you're looking at Missouri State, whether you've applied to Missouri State. We'll give you another minute or so. Brilliant. Hopefully you didn't have to think about that too long. Excellent. So as we suspected, a lot of new students, or what we call first-time students, and parents. So welcome, everyone. If you're transferring to us, we're glad to have you, and this information is certainly going to be relevant to you. All right, let's crack on. The first thing you need to know is what happens and when. Right now, we are sort of in the middle of this chart. A couple of months ago on October 1st, the FAFSA opened, and that is based on your 2019 financials, your income and your assets. This is for the 2021-2022 school year. So when you log into the FAFSA, make sure you're doing the right one. This will be for the fall of 2021. November 1st, about a month ago, the MSU Foundation Scholarship application opened up. That's on your My Missouri State if you've been admitted. You can already apply for on-campus housing if that's what you want to do. December 1st, just a week and a half ago or so, we had our first competitive scholarship deadline. And then we're sort of in this waiting period where we are processing FAFSAs that you hopefully have sent to us by now. And we are about ready to send out aid offers. Looking forward, February 1st is the FAFSA priority deadline. So you want to make sure you have done your FAFSA if you're going to apply for federal student aid, so you get the best possible opportunity to receive federal and state financial aid as well. March and into the summer, there's a lot of time for a lot of action to take place. We'll talk about what happens in just a second. And then August 1st is a soft but important deadline for a lot of things to have happened. And we'll talk about that in greater detail as well. Also important to know who to go to if you have a question about the financial process. We're the Office of Student Financial Aid, so we can answer questions about scholarships, disbursements, FAFSA, aid offers. We also have our Student Financial Services Office. They're sort of our billing office, and they're responsible for keeping track of your bill. The Bursar's Office will be the office to take the payments either online or on campus. And while admissions isn't on here, they're a great group of people also on campus in Carrington Hall and in the Welcome Center. If you have a question, I'm sure they'd be able to direct you to the right person if they themselves don't know the answer. So what is an aid offer? Lots of things go into an aid offer. One of the most important ones is actually the title. Notice I haven't said award letter, because the word letter doesn't really apply in a lot of circumstances. Many colleges and universities are getting with the digital times, and a letter is no longer an applicable term. At Missouri State, first-time students still receive something colorful in the mail, and you can literally put it on the fridge. But for most of our returning students, we actually send a notice to their university email. So only the first year are you going to get an actual letter. That's why we call it an aid offer. The word offer is also better at capturing what a financial aid package is. When someone offers you something, your job is not complete yet. You need to meet them at least part way in order to realize the offer, and financial aid is no different. There are steps you will need to complete after we have sent you your aid offer. But the aid offer is a way for us to let you know what you might qualify for. Generally, the aid offer is going to be available 2 weeks or so after you submit your FAFSA. And I didn't mention this, but I should have. We will only send an aid offer to you if you have sent us your FAFSA. If you don't intend to use federal or state financial aid, that's okay. No need to do a FAFSA, although I would certainly encourage you to anyway. You may still receive institutional scholarships, be they competitive, like the presidential or some of our leadership scholarships, or the automatic ones like the Board of Governors. You can still receive those without filing a FAFSA, but in general, 2 weeks after you file your FAFSA is when you would receive your aid offer. Okay, so one of the most important things about an aid offer is what is on it. How much money do we think you can receive? So this is a sample of what you might see on your aid offer coming from Missouri State. Up top, we're going to put the stuff that you definitely want to know about. This is what we call gift aid. It's stuff that doesn't have to be repaid. Now, there is a little bit of work involved, like in our example, the Provost Scholarship. There are some renewal criteria that you have to meet in order to receive that from year to year. For a lot of this, you will have to accept the financial aid on your student portal. So while it is gift and you don't have to repay it, there is a little bit of work involved. And then we're going to list some self-help aid. These are things like unsubsidized and subsidized student loans. You might also see something called a credit-based education loan or work study. These are things that really have a lot of detail, and there's a little more work involved in either obtaining it or paying it back when you graduate. So like I said, gift aid will be up top, and then our self-help aid is going to be at the bottom. And then at the very bottom, you will likely see a total estimated aid eligibility. Again, eligibility, this is what we think you qualify for, not necessarily what you're going to receive. You don't have to borrow the loans if you don't want to. Absolutely not. In fact, if you don't need them, I would say don't borrow. All right. Knowing how much aid you could receive doesn't do you much good unless you know how far it's going to take you at Missouri State. Institutions are generally going to put in an estimated cost. This is, as always, a best prediction of costs and usually represents an average for a particular student group, such as first-time college students living on campus. At Missouri State, we try to break it down into two groups: students who are who are from Missouri, because their tuition is billed at one rate, and then non-Missouri residents, they receive tuition, or their billed tuition at a different rate. It's important to know the differences between what you're between in-state and out-of-state, especially if you're a non-Missouri resident. Like I said, this is an estimate, and a lot of these can change. In fact, one of the reasons we haven't sent aid offers yet is we are looking at this component and seeing how we can, if anything, customize what we are sending to you on your aid offer so that you have a better idea of what it's going to cost you to attend Missouri State. So many of these components that you see here have not been set for 21-22 for your first year at Missouri State. This that you see is what is on our current aid offer. So it gives you an idea of what it might cost, but these numbers can change. I mentioned that there is something you can literally hang on the fridge. That's an important thing to have in an aid offer. And ours is equipped with a handy little checklist. There are a couple of important steps that you want to take when you are accepting or reviewing your financial aid. First, even though you get something in the mail, a letter, award letter, if you will, it's still going to be processed online through your My Missouri State account. So if you are admitted, you have a My Missouri State account, and you can go out there right now and look at your financial aid page. It's probably going to be blank, but it's important to have access to set up your My Missouri State account so that you can review your financial aid offer when it does come in. I mentioned that we email students in future years their aid offer. So you'll want to make sure you have your Bear Mail account set up or your university email address. Then when you receive your aid offer in the mail, you can review it online through your My Missouri State account. Again, after you've sent your FAFSA to Missouri State. To do that, log into your My Missouri State account, and under the Student tab will be everything related to finances, both billing and financial aid. There's a financial aid homepage that you'll click on. You'll want to make sure that you have the right year selected. This is pulled from our current aid offer guide, so it's got a different aid year on it. Don't be confused about that. And we'll also give you some instructions on how to complete something like entrance counseling and a master promissory note if you decide to borrow student loans. All right, I want to pause for clarification real quick.
Yeah, Stephen, thanks. I did want to maybe prompt you a little bit. You mentioned a couple slides ago that the award offer would come about 2 weeks after the family had submitted to FAFSA. Mm-hmm. To clarify, I believe we'll send out we haven't sent out any yet though, right? We'll send out them here very soon, and then moving forward, it will be approximately a couple weeks. Would that be accurate?
Sort of.
Okay. So maybe you want to give more details on that.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. So the great answer in financial aid is it depends. If you have sent us your FAFSA, then it is likely you received something or will receive something very soon in the mail, such that we're calling a financial aid preview. It doesn't have all the components of an aid offer, so it doesn't have the budget. It won't have a definition of the different types of aid. It's just going to be a very brief, this is what we think you might qualify for based on the information on your FAFSA. So we're calling that an aid preview. We are waiting to send the actual aid offers either in the mail or via email for returning students until we get closer to setting our final costs for the next year. So it's possible you received something already, but it's not the aid offer, it's just an aid preview. Did I answer that question, Matt?
Yeah. Should a family that did the FAFSA, say, way back in October, early November, should they be concerned if they haven't received anything at this point?
No, not necessarily. There are a couple of reasons why, but if they want, they're welcome to email us financialaid@missouristate.edu with the student's name and M number if you know it, and we'll be happy to check on that.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Okay. Also on the aid offer will be useful tips for what you need for preparing for the fall semester. This will help us ensure your success in navigating the financial aid process. And then also on the aid offer, the Department of Education would be very disappointed in us as schools if we didn't provide some basic education on the types of financial aid you might see in your aid offer. This would include definitions like subsidized loan and unsubsidized loans. To that note, they're almost the same thing. The main difference between a subsidized loan and an unsubsidized loan. The subsidized loan effectively has no interest while you're in school. I'll say that again. The subsidized loan has no interest while you're in school. So yeah, if you pay it back before you graduate, it's a free loan. The unsubsidized loan does have interest growing, and you'll be responsible for paying that back when you graduate. With either of these loans, you're not required to pay on them while you're in school. You certainly can. So if you're going to borrow a loan, the subsidized loan is the one to borrow first if you have it on your aid offer, because it's basically a cheaper loan for you, and it will cost you less in the long run because there's no interest accumulating while you're in school. Now, when you graduate, interest will grow on both of those loans at the same interest rate. This current school year, it's a little less than 3%. It's 2.75%. The interest rates haven't been set for next year yet, which is one of the reasons that we try to hold off on sending aid offers until we absolutely have to. Matt, I'm going to pause for a couple of questions real quick.
Sounds good.
Okay. So the first question is, how do you submit your FAFSA to Missouri State? Great question, and a really important one. You would go to studentaid.gov, and there is a click to apply button. That will take you to the FAFSA website, or you can go to fafsa.ed.gov, which is the old website. You'll log into the FAFSA. If you've never done the FAFSA before, you'll want to set up an account called an FSA ID, basically a username and password. And it's that FSA ID, that username and password, is linked to your social security number. So make sure that it is only you using your FSA ID. Parents can set up their own because they have their own social. Students will log into fafsa.ed.gov with their FSA ID and start the FAFSA as a new student. I have done it in 6 minutes with students on a cell phone. It can take 45 minutes, depends on how prepared you are. But at the end of the process, you'll get an email confirming that your FAFSA is submitted and it's on its way to Missouri State. Make sure you put Missouri State school code on there when you submit your FAFSA, otherwise it won't come to us. Matt, you may be able to chime in on this one. Do students need to live on campus for their 4-year or for their first year? Generally, yes, unless they are local to the area or they're bringing in a lot of post-high school transfer credits.
Exactly. You know, if a student is within 45 miles of campus, or as you mentioned, has more than 27 credit hours post high school, so that's not going to count dual credit, AAP, those type of things, they would have the option. As far as why that's a requirement, it's honestly because there are a lot of tremendous benefits to living on campus. Students do better academically, they get more acclimated socially, make more friendships and stronger relationships. It really just sets you up for success in your college experience when you live on campus that first year.
Thank you. There's a brilliant question in here about the next steps, the checklist that you can put on the fridge. Yes, you can do these, you can complete these actions before you accept your admissions offer. You can do these during the summer because once you have applied to Missouri State and been accepted, we will start the financial aid process. It doesn't mean you have to accept the admissions offer. You'll still get an aid offer and can still start accepting the award and completing your entrance counseling and promissory note if you're going to borrow. There's a question about merit-based scholarships. That may not have been on the preview because the aid we include on our aid offers or our previews is just that which we know about. But scholarships take a long time to apply for, to process. And so it's possible that a student may have applied for a scholarship or several scholarships, and we haven't processed the application, haven't added it to the student's account. It could be a number of reasons why they didn't see it on their preview or their aid offer. If you applied a long time ago and you think you should have seen that scholarship on a preview or the aid offer, yeah, let us know. Send us an email, financialaid@missouri-state.edu. We'll be happy to check on that for you and make sure that nothing was missed. There's a question about the A+ program. Missouri State doesn't accept the A+ tuition benefit program per se, but we want to give credit where credit is due. So we do have a scholarship for students who completed A+ in high school and are eligible. It's $500 a year for 4 years if the student is not receiving another Missouri State scholarship. So let's say you are receiving the Provost Scholarship or the Board of Governors. You'll get that scholarship because it's valued higher than the A+, that $500 scholarship each year. Great question about subsidized and unsubsidized payments. If you take out both loans, you can pay on either loan. It's up to you. I would pay the unsubsidized loan off first, especially if you're still in school, because that's the one that is growing interest while you're in school. So yes, you can take out both loans, leave the subsidized as it is, and make payments on the unsubsidized loan to pay that off, certainly. Missouri State School Code is 002503. It is an option on the FAFSA if you search Springfield or you search Missouri State University. There may be a couple of Missouri State universities that come up when you're completing the FAFSA. Make sure you pick the Missouri State University in Springfield, not our friends in West Plains, although you can certainly send your FAFSA to them. They are awesome folks. 002503 is going to be the code that'll pull up Missouri State automatically. All right. A couple of questions about what to do when the amount on one's preview or one's aid offer doesn't cover the balance. There are lots of options. The scholarship game is not over, and it's not too late to apply for many scholarships. In fact, it may actually be too early for some. So keep the scholarship applications flowing. If you want to reach for the low-hanging fruit, there are things like a Parent Plus loan, which is a student loan, but in the parent's name, it comes from the government. But a student does have to fill out their FAFSA. Private loans are also an option. But again, if you don't have to borrow, then you might consider looking at other funding methods, pulling them a little bit from savings if you have that option. Also consider that a student's costs while they are attending college often overlap with naturally occurring costs. So housing, groceries and meals, general upkeep, like occasionally refreshing the wardrobe as things get worn, transportation. Those are all costs that are not specific to going to college per se. You're going to experience those costs regardless. So when we look at a cost of attending Missouri State, a lot of that is not new. So keep that in mind as you're planning your finances. What determines subsidized or unsubsidized student loans? Basically, your financial need. The government, I said effectively there's no interest on those subsidized student loans while you're in school. That's not exactly true. The government's technically paying it. So they don't have endless money, and they want to make sure that they are spending money on that interest to the students who need the financial help. So students with generally more financial need as determined by the FAFSA when they submit it are more likely to receive the subsidized loan. Students with less financial need who have a higher ability to pay for college as determined by the FAFSA, again, there's that disclaimer in there, are less likely to receive an unsubsidized loan. But you'd be surprised at how much financial need you don't have to have in order to receive a subsidized loan. All right, we're going to move on just a little bit because there are some questions about not receiving previews and not receiving aid offers. Notice this checklist here, your next steps. It includes an opportunity to visit your My Missouri State account. Also on that My Missouri State account will be a list of things that you may want to turn in before we can officially offer financial aid. So in that case, we're going to send you a preview or a preliminary financial aid offer that'll say, based on your FAFSA, we think this is what you're going to qualify for, but we need some more information from you first. This is very common. It happens all the time. The best way to make sure this doesn't become an issue in August is check your Bear Mail account, check your university email address, and respond to anything from the university. If we send you an email, go ahead and read it. We don't send unnecessary emails or text. And if we're asking for something, go ahead and send it to us. So like I said, students who need to turn in more information will usually receive a preliminary aid offer. Then when we get all the information we need to confirm the information on the FAFSA or clear up a possible error on the FAFSA, we'll send the student an official aid offer. Figuring out what you need to turn in is nice and easy. On your My Missouri State account, there is a financial aid homepage, and there's under the home tab of that financial aid homepage will be the items that you need to turn in. We've even given you links to some of these, like the dependent verification worksheet. You can click on that dependent verification worksheet and it will take you right to the website and exactly to the form you need to turn in. Some of these things, unfortunately, we don't have a link to, like copies of a tax return or W-2s. Those things are going to be in your personal records and we don't have links to them for obvious reasons, but we'll still list those documents for you. We will tell you if we received it, if we've not received it, if it is incomplete. For example, tax returns need to be signed, hand-signed by the filer or by a certified tax preparer if you had your tax returns done professionally. If it's not signed and we get a copy of it, we'll just mark it as incomplete. We'll still hold on to it. And when you have a chance, send us the signed copy, and then you're golden as far as that requirement goes. All of this you want to have turned in by well before classes start in August, because we're going to disperse financial aid during the second week of classes. We can't make any disbursements until we have all of the documents, if you're one of those that needs to turn in documents. Okay. Matt, I'm going to pause here before we launch our next pop quiz to answer some more questions. We've got a lot of them coming in hot. This is some great stuff.
It sounds good.
Okay. Question, how do you set up a Bear Mail account? Matt, I might need your help with this one. When students receive an aid offer, do we still include instructions on how to set up their Bear Mail account?
We do. We actually send those instructions with students' acceptance notices as well. And honestly, I think the best piece of advice I can give with that is we get that question all the time to our admissions inbox, and that's admissions@missouristate.edu. If anyone wants to send us an email and ask with help setting up their email, we are glad to help them.
Very good. Thank you. Okay. Another question, is FAFSA from Missouri State alone? No, not necessarily. So the FAFSA is just an application for all kinds of federal financial aid. It will be sent to Missouri State if you put our school code on it. And you may receive a loan offer, you may receive a grant or a scholarship from the university based on your FAFSA. So it just depends on what sort of information is on your FAFSA and possibly what sort of financial need you have. If you haven't received your acceptance letter yet, Matt, what would a student do?
This is probably going to sound like my cure-all, but that's another great place where if you want to send us an email, we can look into it. It's definitely a high volume time of year, so that can make things take a little bit longer. There also are some cases where a student may think that we have everything when actually we might be missing something. So yeah, shoot us an email to admissions@missouristate.edu, and we'd love to give you some details.
Great, thank you. I'm going to go back to the top of the list. These are some great questions. I have one, they've not been accepted yet, but they did put Missouri State School Code on there. Thank you. We love to hear that. Once you're accepted, we will send you an aid offer or a preview depending on how early you are accepted. That will tell you what you qualify for. Now, your financial aid offer can change even after we send that preview. So let's say that you took the ACT, maybe you didn't do as well as you wanted to, and we weren't able to offer an automatic scholarship. If you take the ACT again, or if you bring your GPA up during the first semester of your senior year, then we can still offer you that scholarship if it's automatic. It may not be on your aid offer, but it will be on your financial aid homepage on your My Missouri State. And we review new ACT and new GPAs all the time so that we are constantly offering new scholarships to students who qualify. Scholarships, like I said, are coming. We are sending those out continually, depending on the scholarship. So for our presidential scholarship, which is one of our most competitive ones, we haven't interviewed for that yet, so we won't be sending those out. But it's possible if you qualified, you might have received notice that you're getting an automatic scholarship based on your ACT and your GPA. And yes, some of those scholarships are automatic. We look at your high school transcripts and your ACT or SAT scores. And if you meet the criteria, you'll automatically be offered that scholarship. I say offered because you do have to accept it. Usually that is an online process, but we'll send you something in the mail telling you that you've received that scholarship. Athletics work sort of hand in hand with financial aid. We will offer you as much federal and state financial aid as we can based on your FAFSA. Sometimes a student is getting a lot of athletic aid and we have to reduce the loans, or in very rare cases, we have to reduce a scholarship, but most of the time a student can receive athletic aid and federal or state financial aid. And it's usually not a problem. We don't have to reduce anything. Just going through some questions. Okay. The question about the A+ scholarship, the A+ recognition scholarship that I mentioned. Yes, it does require a separate one-page application, which you can download from our website or pick up from our financial aid office. There are ways for students to qualify for in-state tuition, but it's based not on just the fact that you're attending Missouri State and you're living in Missouri to attend school. There are other criteria, such as family moving to the state on a permanent basis. Matt, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that there is if your spouse is a Missouri resident, or if you are married to a Missouri resident, then you might qualify for in-state tuition that way. Am I correct in that thinking?
Oh, that is a good question. And residency is always a tricky one. That sounds right, but certainly if you have any residency questions as far as qualifying for in-state tuition, we'd love to help you off the webinar. You may have mentioned this, but I'll just reiterate that certainly if you have a parent or a grandparent who graduated from Missouri State and you live out of state, that's another way you can get in-state tuition.
Great, thank you. A couple of questions about work study, and I've neglected to mention this. This, by the way, would be under the self-help aid because it does require some effort on your part. Obviously, you've got to work to earn the paycheck. So work study is one of those financial programs. It's from the government, so funds aren't endless. And we award work study to students on a first-come, first-served basis. In other words, who filed their FAFSA first. It's likely that we have awarded all the work study that we have available initially, but it's possible that some students we've offered work study to don't either come to Missouri State, they decide not to use their work study offer, and so we'll pass that award along to the next student. And that's where the work study waitlist comes into play. The work study waitlist can be found under your My Missouri State profile, and that should be available around the first week of classes. It may actually be available during the summer, depending on how we are able to set that up with the new school year. So if you didn't get work study on your preview, or if you don't see work study on your aid offer, feel welcome to jump on the work study waitlist when it becomes available on your My Missouri State. Work study is based on financial need. So students who have no financial need, likely a high EFC, probably won't see work study on their aid offer, but keep in mind that less than 15% of our jobs on campus require a student to be awarded work study. Most of our jobs are not dependent on work study. So you can still get an on-campus job, and it's the same job as a work study job. Same pays the same, work is the same. It's just not coded as a work study job.
Stephen, do you mind if I jump in on a few?
Not at all.
One that was mentioned, and this is a great question, and we certainly understand why you might be asking it. There was a question about considering the current situation, or are the ACT or SAT still required for merit-based scholarships? And again, that's a great question. As of right now, at least our automatic scholarships, the Board of Governors, the Provost, and the Dean's scholarships do have a test component that is still a requirement. We're certainly having some serious discussions about that. And certainly if anything changes, we will let you know. It'll be a very high priority of ours to let you know. As far as being able to update your information, we had a question about can we send a new transcript? Would a GPA increase help? The answer to that is definitely yes. We will use whatever your highest GPA is, whether it was when you applied, whether it was at the end of your first half of your senior year, or even at the end of senior year. You can send us that new transcript and possibly increase your scholarship award. With the test, we will use up through the April ACT or SAT. So you could also possibly retake the test. I know that is kind of a challenge, but if you're able to do that and increase the score, that could also increase your automatic scholarship.
Great, thank you. All right, I think, Matt, let's put a pin in some of these questions and move on to some more financial aid, some canned financial aid stuff, and then we can come back to these questions. Okay, so aid offer. Has anybody received an aid offer or the Missouri State aid offer preview? And I'm wondering if, let's see, do we have a poll question just to kind of gauge the room? There we go. And this doesn't have to be from Missouri State. It can be from another institution. This is anonymous. We're not asking this to get the upper hand. We just want to know what your familiarity is with other aid offers. All right, another second or two. Okay. So a lot of us have received an aid offer or a preview in some shape, form, or fashion, whether that's from Missouri State or another school. If you're unsure, one thing you might do is bring the aid offer to the school that it's from and ask, hey, what is this? And what does it mean? Is it the final aid offer, or is it just a preliminary aid offer like Missouri State has sent out? Okay, so accepting your aid offer. Like I said, you've got to meet us at some point in the middle of where we are and where you are. And accepting your financial aid is pretty easy at Missouri State. First thing you want to do, go to my.missouristate.edu, create your account if you haven't already, or log in. Your Bear Pass is generally your initials and numbers. It's not going to be your email address. And if you need to create an account, you'll be able to click the Get an Account and set that up. This also activates your Bear Mail, your MSU email address. From there, like I said, everything is on the student, under the student tab, both the financial aid and the financial services. Remember, our billing office. We're mostly concerned with financial aid in this webinar. Right now, if you're admitted to Missouri State, you'll see two links, financial aid homepage and the MSU Foundation Scholarship. By the way, that's due March 1st. Please don't miss out on that. Make it a nice winter break project. If you click on the financial aid homepage, it'll pull up your tailored profile. Make sure you select the right award year. Most of us are looking at the fall 2021 aid year. That starts the 2021-2022 year. And then you are going to see several things. Award offer is what we're most focused on because that's got the good stuff on it. That'll tell you if we have created your aid offer. It'll also allow you to accept your aid offer, and it's pretty self-explanatory. Just walk yourself through the steps, but if you have any questions, feel welcome to give us a call, send us an email. We'll be happy to help you out with that. On your aid offer, it's going to include most anything we know about. So scholarships, if you have sent us a private scholarship, that may be included on your aid offer, a university scholarship if we have awarded to you. But again, keep in mind that we may not have gotten to your name on the scholarship awardee list yet. So be patient. Grants, something like the Pell Grant, the Access Missouri Grant, those are going to be automatically accepted for you, but you do want to take note of them on your aid offer. Scholarships, for some of the Missouri State scholarships, they require a separate acceptance form. Generally, we send you a letter telling you that you're getting a scholarship, and the acceptance process is, we're hoping it'll be online. So you'll accept that online, possibly through another link. And then if you're borrowing student loans, these have to be accepted manually. We do not want you to borrow if you don't need it, because it doesn't, if you can avoid it, why not? So we want you to tell us actively, yes, I want to borrow student loans. This is where you're going to accept the student loans, and that's only one of 3 steps. To finish the loan acceptance process, you'll go to another website, studentaid.gov. At studentaid.gov, you'll log in with your FSA ID. It's the same username and password that you used to get to your FAFSA. From there, there's a complete aid process, and you'll want to complete 2 things. Entrance counseling. This is just the education on the student loans that you're borrowing. And then the master promissory note, make sure you pick the flavor for undergrads. This is your agreement to repay the loan and not skip town when you graduate. These 2 things take about 30 to 45 minutes, hardly any time at all. So as soon as you get the aid offer, if you know you're going to borrow, go ahead and do them. These 2 steps, get them out of the way. But if for some reason you're not able to do entrance counseling and promissory note, if you're borrowing loans straight away, you've got some time. I mentioned this August 1st deadline. It's a soft but important deadline. This is when you want to have everything done. Loans accepted on your My Missouri State, entrance counseling completed, promissory notes signed, those both at studentaid.gov. If you're applying for private loans, you'll want to have applied by August 1st. Otherwise, after August 1st, it could take us a little longer to process that loan. Okay, I'll pause for a few more questions. A couple of questions about Bright Flight coming in. Yes, Missouri State does participate in the Bright Flight program. That's something that you might see on your aid offer if we know about it. If you think you qualify and you don't see it on your aid offer, I would wait till the aid offer comes in first. It is possible that it just may take us a little while to get that on your aid offer if you qualify. But if you don't see it, give us a call or send us an email, and we'll be happy to check on that for you. Question about private scholarships sent directly to the university. If you're applying for a private scholarship, if you receive a private scholarship, you can cash that in a couple of ways. One, you can actually cash in the check. We don't recommend that. What we recommend is that you bring the check to us, to our office physically, and we'll ensure that the full amount obviously gets paid to your account, or at least tell us about it, and so we can put a note on your account that you're getting this scholarship. If you receive the check at your home address, bring it to us, or a lot of scholarship organizations will send the check directly to us. As long as we know who it's for and we can pick you out, then we will hold that check for you and pay it in August when we pay the rest of our financial aid. And all scholarships, both private and institutional, are paid no earlier than the 2nd week of classes. If you are receiving an automatic scholarship like the Board of Governors, but you're hoping for a better scholarship, I say better, a higher valued scholarship, yes, still accept whatever you have. Even if you've accepted some sort of financial aid, if you qualify for something better, we're going to replace your old offer with your new one.
And Stephen, if you don't mind, I might jump in. We've had a few questions about the enrollment deposit.
Sure.
Just so everyone's aware, the enrollment deposit is that next step after being admitted. It's accepting your offer of admission, reserving your place at Missouri State. That is $150. It is not a prerequisite. It's not required that you have done that in order to set up your email account, set up your My Missouri State account, be considered for financial aid, all those things. The first thing that will really be required to have paid the enrollment deposit will be February 1st, the same as the priority FAFSA deadline. That's when our SOAR registration traditionally opens. And SOAR is our orientation program at Missouri State that takes place over the summer. There are a number of different dates throughout the summer, but they are limited capacity and they're first come, first served. So the students who have paid the enrollment deposit by February 1st will get their first crack at getting the SOAR date that works best with their schedule. There was a question, if you're not able to afford the enrollment deposit, we certainly understand. There's actually a process based upon the FAFSA. When a student sends their FAFSA to Missouri State, if they qualify for the federal Pell Grant, so if they qualify and have that high level of need, then you are able to defer your enrollment deposit. So instead of having to pay it right then, you're able to move forward to the next steps without paying it. But I do want to be clear that a deferral is not necessarily a waiver. It is, move forward to your fall bill and taking out of financial aid typically. But just so you're aware, it's $150. You don't have to have it done for many of the next steps. But if you do want to sign up for SOAR, you are going to need to have that paid, whether that's by February 1st or after when you do decide to attend Missouri State.
Great. Thank you, Matt. A couple of FAFSA specific questions, which I'm happy to jump in on because this is what I love to do about my job. If you are filling out the FAFSA and you can use the data retrieval tool, absolutely. It will make completing the FAFSA easier. If you are one of the ones where we need to ask for more information, it's going to reduce the number of things that we have to ask for. It's not required. And in fact, some people may not be able to use the data retrieval tool, but absolutely try if you can. And it will pull the information from your 2019 tax return over to your FAFSA. It is completely secure, so secure that it won't even show you the numbers it's pulling in. Only I will see that, or only we will see that. If you need some help with filing a FAFSA, absolutely. Give us a call or schedule an appointment with us. We're happy to meet with you via phone or Zoom at a time of your choosing to walk you through the FAFSA process. A lot of high schools are doing what we call FAFSA frenzies or FAFSA nights, where you can meet with a counselor, somebody in the financial aid profession to get help filing your FAFSA. If you're going to request an appointment with us, you're certainly welcome to do that. Go ahead and give the FAFSA a try. And when you get stuck, then make the appointment. That way we know exactly what we're working with and we can try to answer that or help you through that process smoothly. And if you're lucky enough to get through the FAFSA process and you're not quite sure what all that information means, again, you can set up an appointment with a counselor here in our office. We'll be happy to walk you through the FAFSA results and what that might mean for your financial aid. If you need to send us copies of your tax returns and you had your tax return professionally prepared, then your preparer would have signed it with their name, their PTIN, their preparer tax ID number, and that is considered signed, even if it's not signed by hand by you. If you self-prepared your tax return, then you do need to go ahead and put pen to paper, sign it physically at in the designated signature line, and we'll consider that a signed tax return. Okay, very good. Since we're kind of in the FAFSA neighborhood, let's talk a little bit about what to do if the FAFSA doesn't quite reflect your financial situation. Matt, I think we may have another question lined up for this group. There we go. So the FAFSA is based on 2019 financial information, but it is possible, in fact, a lot of us may have seen some sort of income change in 2020. And if that is your case, then a review and possibly an update to the information on your FAFSA may benefit you, but that review and update can only be done by a member of our staff. It's not something that you as the student or parent can do yourself. No offense. It's just not something that the department allows. So feel welcome to reach out to our office, set up a meeting, and we can go over the types of change you've seen, if it's going to benefit, if it's going to change your FAFSA. Sometimes an income decrease won't change the FAFSA results at all. That happens, but we can talk to you about that. Okay. Oh, nobody wants to talk to us. That's all right. Some of you, I'm guessing, may not have filed your FAFSA. If you do, and your situation has changed in 2020, absolutely reach out to us. We're happy to walk you through what sort of special circumstance we could consider for you. With that, that's all that I have. So we're going to dive into the Q&A as best we can. We're over time, but that's all right. I don't mind spending more time with you all if you don't mind spending time with me. Matt, did you have anything to add?
I will throw in, we've had some just kind of general questions related to things like super scoring, and it's probably useful for everyone to know that we will use a test score super score for both admission and for scholarships. If a student does have any trouble setting up their My Missouri State account, we've had some questions about needing like an M number or a Bear Pass ID. We'd love again for you to email us. You can also email me directly. You can see my email there up on the screen. Those are the exact type of things that admissions would love to help students with. So just as an FYI for everybody.
Great, fantastic. So there's a couple of questions about scholarships for out-of-state students. Yes, for most of our scholarships are available to both in-state and out-of-state students. And in fact, on a lot of our institutional scholarships, if you're not a Missouri resident, but you're receiving an institutional scholarship, part of that scholarship includes a waiver of the difference between in and out-of-state tuition. So you're effectively paying tuition at the in-state rate if you're receiving one of our institutional scholarships, in addition to the actual scholarship amount. All right. Lots of great questions here. I imagine, Matt, that a couple of us are having difficulty scheduling an ACT, especially with the current COVID pandemic. You mentioned that we are test optional for admissions. Is that correct?
We are, as of right now, not for scholarships, at least for our automatic scholarships. Again, I think the best I can tell everyone is we definitely understand the concerns, and something we're advocating for in admissions, to possibly have some test optional scholarship possibilities, but nothing is definite as of right now.
Thank you. And if you're lucky to get a test date, some of our scholarships require an earlier test. Some of our scholarships, you can take the ACT in February and still qualify for like our automatic scholarships. For our most competitive ones, such as the presidential scholarship, you need to have taken your ACT and made a qualifying score before that deadline, which was December. If you didn't score as well as you would have liked on your ACT or SAT and you want to take it again, you're absolutely welcome to. We may not be able to look at that new score if it's high, especially if it's higher in the subsequent test. We may not be able to consider it for the original scholarship that you were applying for, but if it puts you in a different qualifying range, then we can certainly award that new higher valued scholarship based on the new, more recent and higher ACT score. Scholarship offers are out there for, we don't take them back, with an exception. But for most students, you'll be able to log into your My Missouri State at any time and view what is offered to you. Because when we create an aid offer, it is what we have a reasonable level of assurance that you qualify for, and it's not likely that we're going to pull that financial aid back. Now, the one exception is for students who have to turn in more documentation, like tax returns, a worksheet of some sort. For those students, we're going to tell you what you qualify for, we think, ask you to turn in the documents, and if you haven't turned in all those documents at some point, you may see some of the items on your financial aid offer start to slip away, like work study. There's a smaller federal grant where if we haven't had a response from you, we're going to need to move on and award that to the next student in line who has completed all the requirements. All the more important to check your email address constantly, because if we need anything, we'll email you, we'll put it on your My Missouri State so that you'll get that notice there. Outside scholarships in general don't reduce the merit aid offered by Missouri State for a couple of reasons. One, it's unlikely that we would need to reduce one of those programs to keep you within your cost of attendance. I mentioned that we estimate what it's going to cost you to attend Missouri State for a year. That's also as much financial aid as we can award. But in certain circumstances, you can receive more financial aid than that budget, that cost of attendance, especially if you're not receiving a federal Pell Grant. So generally, no, outside scholarships aren't going to reduce your Missouri State financial aid. Apply. Ooh, great question. What is considered a high EFC? You know, that depends. A high EFC for somebody could be a couple of thousand. A high EFC could be 6 figures. The highest one I've seen is 999,000, which is where the EFC caps. Once it reaches $1 million, then the number doesn't go any higher. And I've seen that before. If you think your EFC is too high, though, it may be. Often there is something with your FAFSA that is misreported, or I've seen people add a couple of zeros to their income, and it really overly inflates their EFC, and they end up missing out on all sorts of financial aid. A high EFC for Access Missouri purposes would be anything over 12,000, but a high EFC for Pell purposes would be anything generally over 5,700. So you can have a lower EFC, not qualify for Pell Grant, but still qualify for Access Missouri. From the sneak peek that some of you may have received to the actual aid offer, many of you are going to see the same information. If anything, it's going to increase because we know about a new scholarship, or we have set our cost of attendance, and so that actually can change the amount of financial aid you qualify for. Nothing you did, just we've set the estimated cost, and that affects the financial aid. But generally, you're not going to see a decrease between the preliminary offer and the actual aid offer. Now, if you are selected to send more information to Missouri State, like those tax returns or those worksheets, it is quite possible that you can see your final aid offer change from what you saw in your preliminary offer. That's because we're actually changing your FAFSA, and that can impact your EFC, and it can impact your financial aid for better or for worse. If you don't want to borrow student loans, yeah, file the FAFSA, because you still need it to receive the Access Missouri grant. Some scholarships, whether at Missouri State or not, may require a FAFSA, so it doesn't hurt to file the FAFSA. It takes relatively little time if you know what you're doing, or if you've got some help especially, and there's no cost to you. So Matt, there's a question about whether a future student should apply for housing even if they're not completely sure they will attend. My gut reaction says yes, because at some point the housing deposit is refundable if they decide to bail and attend somewhere else. Is that your understanding?
Yeah, you read my mind, Stephen. I was actually typing out an answer to that one.
Okay.
That is completely up to the student. Certainly, if you want to go ahead and wait to apply for housing. As you mentioned, Stephen, that deposit is refundable up until May 1st. So you're certainly not on the hook for that money if you decide to attend another school. The reason it can be beneficial to apply for housing early is housing placement is first come, first serve. So if there's a residence hall that you're really excited about and you really want to live in, your odds will be better of being placed into that residence hall the earlier you apply for housing. So that's the one reason I would encourage a student to go ahead and do the housing application, even if they're not 100% certain.
Great, thank you. Question about Parent Plus loans here. Parent Plus loans do accrue interest, and it's at a higher rate than student loans. For example, student loans this year are at 2.75%. By the way, that interest rate is for the life of the loan. A Parent Plus loan this year is at 5.3%, so quite a bit higher. If you're going to borrow, it is at least cheaper to borrow the student loan first. Now, whether it's better for the student to borrow or the parent to borrow, that depends on your family's situation. Due date for accepting merit scholarships, as soon as you can. And if you accept a merit scholarship, that doesn't lock you into Missouri State. It would sadden our cold, dark hearts if you didn't come to Missouri State, but if you decide to go to another institution, that's perfectly fine, even if you've accepted the merit scholarship. Another one about how we accept our FAFSA offer. It depends on what is being offered. If it's a Pell Grant, you'll want to review the Pell Grant on your My Missouri State. If you're accepting loans, there are additional steps, such as accepting the loan on your My Missouri State account and then completing the entrance counseling and the promissory note. So it really just depends on what you intend to gain from the FAFSA offer. Are there scholarships in the future? Absolutely. Some of our deadlines have not passed. I believe there's one coming up on February 1st, if I'm not mistaken. And then we've got the automatic scholarships, deans, board of governors, and provosts that we review eligibility for on a continual basis. There are also lots of off-campus scholarships to be had. If you want more information about where to look for off-campus scholarships, take a look at our website. We do have some sources, some scholarship sources on there. And I know we mentioned a couple in our last webinar back in October, but generally your creative mind is going to be your best friend when you're searching for scholarships. Just keep in mind that if you're paying to apply for a scholarship, it's probably not the best opportunity for you. There are some scams out there. Fortunately, they are few and far between. And it's a good idea to use like a dummy email address because some organizations do tend to sell student data. Unfortunately, that's just the world we live in, but there are plenty of scholarships still out there available, both at Missouri State and elsewhere. Oh, by the way, March 1st is an important day because the MSU Foundation Scholarship will close then. Remember, we don't want to forget that date. So yeah, you can still apply for Missouri State scholarships too. And you can even stack your performance scholarships with academic scholarships. That's certainly a possibility. A few questions about what to do if the financial aid offer you receive doesn't quite cover everything. That may be your situation, especially as a new college student, because we want to reduce the amount of debt you are incurring as much as we can. So the government is actually limiting the amount of student loans you can borrow. You're typically going to see nothing more than $5,500 from the government. There are private loans available both for students. Usually they need a cosigner. You have private loans available for parents. You have the Parent Plus loan. But your funding of college is not it's not a one and done deal. It's not a one trick pony kind of race. You want to look at a lot of different options. I mentioned you can pull a little bit from savings, but you can still borrow or you can still apply for scholarships. Try to spread out, if you're going to borrow, try to spread it out over 4 years so that you're not borrowing a lot up front that may be accruing interest. And use your resources wisely and be creative with what you have available to you. As always, feel welcome to schedule an appointment with a counselor here in our office, and we'll be happy to talk about different financing options that may work better for your particular family. There is on our website some more information about if you want to borrow more, what to do in that case. We've put some links out to the Parent Plus loan and then some private loans. We can't tell you which loan to borrow, nor do we want to, but we can give you the instructions on how to search and how to apply for those loans. And that's what we've done. Student EFC, that's going to be in your, what we call a student aid report. It will also be on your computer when you submit the FAFSA. When you hit the submit button, it'll instantly tell you what it thinks your EFC is going to be. It'll be a usually a 4-digit number, sometimes more. And if you have any questions, you can always call the financial aid office. and we'll be able to help you find your EFC. EFC, by the way, is expected family contribution. It's an acronym, and that just means that's what the government expects a student or a family to be able to reasonably afford each year for college. Now, we understand that that may not be the case for you. Totally, we get that. It's common, actually. So that's why you may want to look at the special circumstance process and see if that benefits you. The special circumstance process can get your expected family contribution a little lower, and that may result in a bit more financial aid or a little more beneficial financial aid for your particular situation. There's a really good question about tuition increases due to COVID. That's a great question, and it's still too early in the game to really know. I can tell you that it is in our interest and yours to look at how we assess tuition and see if what we are doing is equitable each year. We certainly want to be in tune with a family's needs, with the way instruction is being delivered. So all of those questions are being asked, and our goal is to provide the best financial opportunity for you as far as the types of financial aid we offer and the way we structure our tuition. Whether that is going to mean an increase or decrease due to COVID necessarily, difficult to say. Each year, though, costs typically do rise a little bit to match the rising cost of living, and that's just a natural occurrence at most institutions. And Matt, feel free to jump in if there's an important question that I've glossed over.
Okay, I've been typing away feverishly, just trying to. I think it's an important thing, certainly to remind everybody. Stephen, I think you'd mentioned, typically with the automatic scholarships, students are notified about those shortly after they're admitted. If maybe they haven't received something, that might be a good case to send us or send financial aid, either one, admissions or financial aid, an email to see what might be up with not having received a notification about an auto scholarship.
Great, thank you. There is a question about the EFC threshold for unsubsidized loans. I should have mentioned this before, and shame on me for not. Unsubsidized loans are the default type of student loan. If you file a FAFSA, you are guaranteed to be offered an unsubsidized student loan unless you're getting enough grants and scholarships to cover your entire cost. But all students who who complete a FAFSA and meet the basic eligibility criteria, being a U.S. resident or permanent resident, actually completing the FAFSA with accurate information, following up with the financial aid office if we need more information, are generally going to be offered an unsubsidized loan. It's the subsidized loan that is the next step up, and it's reserved for students with some sort of financial need. There's not really a threshold, to be honest, about who qualifies for a subsidized loan and who doesn't, because you can have a large family and a small income and qualify for a subsidized loan. You can have a small family and a large income and not qualify for a subsidized loan. So it really just depends on your particular situation.
Stephen, do you want to talk about, there are a couple questions about kind of how aid can be applied, if it can cover, housing, meal plan, just tuition, those type of things. Do you want to give a little synopsis of that?
Yeah, sure. Financial aid can generally be used for anything that is considered an educational cost. That includes tuition, housing both on or off campus, books, even student loan fees. Sometimes there will be a fee associated with a student loan. You can use financial aid to cover that, ironically. Parking passes, miscellaneous items like I said, the wardrobe update, transportation, all of that can be paid for with financial aid because it's essentially a necessary cost of attending college. Some financial programs are based on on just a few of those costs. For example, if you are receiving money through the vocational rehab program, they are going to look at your tuition and what you're spending in books, and they're only going to award their stipend based on some of that information. The Pell Grant, on the other hand, and the federal financial aid, generally that can be used for any financial cost, and it's not earmarked for a particular item in your cost of attendance. So you don't have to use the Pell Grant on tuition. I hope that answered that question, Matt?
Yep, and we've got a question, I think, about a tax 1040 that's right up your alley, Stephen.
Yeah. So if your parents are on your FAFSA and you are asked to provide more information, it's likely that we're going to need to document your parents' tax situation. The best way to do that is for them to go back and update the FAFSA with the data retrieval tool. But if they're not able to do that for whatever reason, then we'll need a signed copy of their tax return, or the 1040.
Okay, one that just came in, I do want to answer. We've had a question, does the fact that a lot of the 2020 graduates deferred their admission due to COVID-19 impact financial aid here at Missouri State? Certainly, Stephen, my understanding would be from a scholarship perspective, nothing has changed. We're certainly not, it's not going to hurt incoming 2021 students that maybe 2020 graduates deferred for a year. It won't, we'll still be awarding scholarships like we normally would. I can't imagine there would be any need-based changes, but you may have some insight on that.
No, I don't really have any insight. I think you covered it quite well. General question: financial aid counselors are not assigned to a particular student or student group. If you have a question, you're welcome to meet with any one of us in the office, and we're happy to help you any way we can. Some of us are a little more specialized. I work a lot with the FAFSA, and that's a lot of what I do. I have colleagues who are more versed in student loan options. So as you are making your appointment, look at what each counselor or what each staff member offers and try to schedule an appointment with that specialist.
And Stephen, I know we talked about this in our first webinar about 2 months ago now, and you may have mentioned it, but I don't think there's ever a bad time to reiterate. Where would you recommend if folks are going to go looking for privately funded scholarships? Where would you recommend they go looking?
Yeah, there are some common sources like simpletuition.com and FastWeb, I believe, is another one. Those tend to sell student data. Your best bets are existing avenues. So if you bank with a credit union, they may actually have a scholarship. Or if a family member is part of a lodge or a union, they may also have scholarships for their members. So explore some of those avenues. Also talk with your counselor in high school before you say fairly well. They may know of some scholarships that come up. Counselors in high school are very well connected with the financial aid world, and we communicate a lot. In fact, there is a special section of the statewide financial aid association that is intended for high school counselors. So we try to keep the lines of communication open. And if something comes down the pike that's fairly new, they may know about it, and you certainly could too if you ask. Here's a nifty little trick: social media, because a lot of schools are posting information about scholarships, not just for their institution, but that can be taken to any other institution. Some social medias are more active than others, but in general, most of what they're going to be pushing out is going to be applicable to a lot of different schools. And then obviously take a look at the websites of the schools that you're applying to. Let's say you're pretty set on going to Missouri State, but there may be something maybe a little closer to home that you're also applying for. Take a look at both websites and see what they're recommending for scholarships, even if there's a high chance that you won't be attending that other institution. And then I mentioned the MSU Foundation Scholarship. That application closes March 1st. Pro tip: don't wait until the last minute to apply. Get that application in well before March 1st, because if the system does bog down, then there's no way we can open up that application to get yours in if it was blocked.
Also, my understanding is that application is pretty hefty, but there are a lot of different scholarships and things in there, so it can take a little bit as well.
Yeah, in the past, we've used it for over 1,200 scholarships a year. And at least it used to be this way. At one point, about 1 in every 4 students who applied would see something. The average scholarship typically hangs around $1,000. Some can be more, some can be less. It just depends on who's got the money and how much.
And I think, a really key thing to always drive home about that is that's something that a student can do every year. And
Yes.
so, knock on wood, fingers crossed, even if you don't receive something your first year, you can always, do that application every year and possibly get further funding for later years.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. As far as we know, the ACT requirement for Bright Flight will technically they set a requirement, a minimum. Usually it's only the top 2 points that are funded by the state. Funding isn't unlimited. Missouri only has so much to go around, so the top 2 ACT scores will generally qualify for Bright Flight. If there's money left over, then they'll start looking at the next rung of ACT scores.
And that raises a good question, Stephen. Let's say a student qualifies for Bright Flight or qualifies for the Access Missouri grant, when do we really have the details from the state as far as what those amounts will be and all that?
Yeah, great question. It depends on if we have the student's FAFSA, because if we don't, then there's no way we know the student, then the student hasn't qualified for the Access Missouri grant. We generally get those lists in the early spring from the state, and it's a constant flow of an updated list. So if you didn't have Bright Flight or Access Missouri on your preview, or you don't have it on your 8 offer in the spring, don't be discouraged. It may just be that the state hasn't sent us your name as an eligible student. All right, getting towards the end there.
Yeah, I think we're getting pretty close to wrapping up, unless anybody has any new things to put in.
Nope. General question about scholarships. We're reviewing students for scholarships all the time. So if the preview that you received in the mail didn't include a scholarship, it's possible that you do qualify. We just haven't identified you as an eligible student. But anytime when we get around to identifying a student as a scholarship recipient, we're going to update our database, and that automatically updates your side of things on your My Missouri State profile. So you can click on the Award Offer tab in your My Missouri State. If we know about the scholarship, it should be listed there as well.
Okay. So, Stephen, what do you think? Are we good to wrap up for tonight?
Yeah, I want to leave with one point. If you think that there's something that we can help with and you would benefit from a meeting, by all means, take a look at our website. We have a digital appointment booking system. You can pick the counselor based on what you need and what they can discuss with you. And then you can either set up a phone appointment or a Zoom appointment, or you can call our office or email our office and say, hey, I'd like to schedule an appointment. And we'll send you that appointment scheduling link so you can schedule on your own time.
Excellent. And I'll just piggyback on that to say, you mentioned this at the beginning. I definitely appreciate it. Admissions, one of our jobs is to help get future students to the right place. So if there's ever a time where you don't know who to go to, you're welcome to send it to us, and we can help get you to the people you need to be talking with. So with that, like I said, I think we will go ahead and wrap up. We really do appreciate everyone being with us tonight, and we really appreciate your questions. As a reminder, do be watching for the email of the recording link. We'll send that out again probably early next week. If you would be interested in having a member of our student financial aid team connect with you individually, please complete a short survey that's going to pop up after you leave this event. I know they would love to connect with you if that's something that would be helpful to you. And with that being said, wish everybody a great evening, and hopefully we'll see you at another virtual event here pretty soon.